Every note ever written at any time in any place. That was the original tagline for Evernote in 2004. Now, before we get into that story, you have questions like, where exactly should you put your old notes? Is it really worth switching from Evernote to something else? And hey, Nick, what do you have against Evernote? Can you tell me exactly where they hurt you? Don't worry, I'm going to cover so much in this video, so please feel free to skip to the section that you need. First, we'll cover Evernote's Icarus moment, the exact moment it started to crash. Then we'll cover who should actually stay in Evernote, and there are a few people. Then, who should switch to Obsidian, and then how to manage the switch. Like, where do your old files go, and how do you transfer them into your new vault? Then we'll get into the weeds and dive into Evernote's 5 CEOs and their goals in a single word. Then the 4 factors truly behind Evernote's freefall. And finally, where exactly Evernote hurt me. An untold story about this pain that Evernote caused me. But now, let's get into the exact moment Evernote crashed, and it's not what you think. Every note ever written at any time in any place. That was Evernote's original vision from founder Stepan Pachikov. We know that that was the original tagline for Evernote because Harry McCracken was in the room where it happened. McCracken is basically the world's top journalist of Evernote. He's been covering it from 2004 all the way to today. Now fast forward 4 years when Apple opened the iPhone App Store in July of 2008. Evernote was a day one launch, and it grew so massively that by the time CEO Phil Libin bounded on stage in October 4th of 2013, Evernote had amassed a user base of 75 million. And I loved Evernote at that time, and I have largely Phil to thank for ushering it into the mainstream. But along with the announcement of a new version for the iPhone, Phil kept going and announced Evernote backpacks, Evernote wallets, socks too, I believe. According to McCracken, Libin sounded startled himself as he said in a good humor, "We're a fashion brand now." And there it was, in a single illuminating sentence, Evernote's Icarus moment. Evernote wanted to be the Nike for smart people, but their expansion into fashion, along with their epic feature bloat, doomed the company to spiral into a free fall for the past decade, and now it's extremely unlikely that it will ever soar to the heights that it once did. Instead, today, competitors like Notion and Obsidian have all the magic. They've taken over the sufficiently epic quest for everyone in the world to have their own ideaverse, a place where they can find what they've written, in the words of Evernote's founder, at any time, in any place. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of who actually might not want to switch out of Evernote. And the best way to show this is by hopping into our notes, so let's go for it. All right, now what you see once more is my script for this video. It's so easy to do this in Obsidian. So now we are at who shouldn't switch. Now you shouldn't switch for 3 major reasons, and let's get into these 3 reasons. Number 1, you are using Evernote as a static archive to clip articles. So essentially, you're more of a collector than a creator. Hey, and that's cool too, or at least for this part of your system, you're just collecting things, you're clipping things, and you like to have a backup. If you want to use Evernote as your anti-library, go ahead and keep doing that. It's really effective. The best tool that Evernote ever came out with is likely the web clipper, because it allows you to clip articles so easily. It's also its most dangerous tool that we'll get to by the end of the video. However, if you are using this as a static archive, hey, it's perfect for that. Now, number 2, you might want to stay if you don't do much synthesizing of information or managing your complex efforts. So Evernote is really good as a storage container. It's really effective as bins where you put stuff. But when it's about mixing that stuff, you need a next generation thinking tool. Number 3, you don't need to switch if you are not saving personal information or journaling, or you don't care that much that other people are using your information in ways that you may never really understand. Basically, if you're using Evernote as a dusty attic that you barely go into, it's full of cobwebs, you don't want to go up there too often, but every now and then, you need to find that PDF. You need to find that one article that you know you saved. It's in there somewhere. Then go ahead and go up into the attic. You might want to keep Evernote around for that. But here's the thing. You just have to not mind paying for a subscription for the rest of your life just to have access to that PDF, to that article. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. So a lot of you are asking, is it really worth the pain of switching? For some of you, it's not. Just be mindful of what your goals are. And if you're more collecting over creating, if you don't need to synthesize information, if you're not saving personal information in there, if you're treating it more like a storage container, like a dusty attic that you rarely need to go into, you can keep using Evernote, especially if you don't mind paying that subscription for the rest of your life just to have access. Now that drives me crazy, just to have access. Like it does. So those are the reasons, however, that you might not want to switch. You don't have to. You don't have to chase the nice and shiny. However, you might want to for the following 3 reasons. Let's just go into it. This is all happening, by the way, in the tool of my choice, which is Obsidian. And I love it dearly. Again, just to be clear about this, because I talk about Obsidian a lot. They don't pay me anything. I've never asked. They've never asked. It's just, this is the tool that brings me joy. So, here I am. I want it to bring you joy too. Now, who should switch? You should switch if any of the following 3 reasons apply to you. You want to use notes to think better and generate insights. That means you want more of that creating energy as opposed to just the collecting energy. Number 2, you use notes to synthesize information, to bring these ideas together, spark new insights, and manage pretty complex efforts sometimes. And number 3, this happens to me because I have to share stuff publicly a lot, but in Evernote it really happened where I would kind of censor what I was writing because I just didn't trust that other people didn't have access to it. There are still platforms that I use where I do censor what I say because I know, hey, it's out there, it's not as protected as my local notes that I have on my computer that I use with Obsidian. Basically, if you want a supercharged sense-making machine where you learn faster, think better, and create more, then a tool like Obsidian is going to give you a better environment for those goals. So that's when you'll want to switch. And a little side note here, I want to touch on this at the end because I have a secret reason for getting you to switch. And I'm going to cover that right near the end, okay? But now a reason a lot of you are here, you might be thinking, I want to do the switch, but I just don't know a few of those details. Like, where do I put those old files? So how to manage your old files. And there are just a couple things. Basically, how do you handle the switch? Now, in a previous video over here or somewhere, I covered how to export from Evernote and import into Obsidian. So check that one out. And what we want to cover in this one, however, is a little bit more focus and nuance around where are you putting your old Evernote vault? How are you handling transferring notes from that old vault into your main one? So let's just dive into that a little bit. And that's kind of why I'm sharing my full screen here, because it's a little hard to show this, but I did prepare a little bit so you can see, this is my file system, and I just want to show a couple things. So if I go to Dropbox, which I use, this is my Dropbox. You can see how simple and clean it is. So I have a folder for when other people who use Dropbox share stuff with me, and then Dropbox has this apps folder, but otherwise we just use the ACE folder structure, and it's beautiful. So we are going to go into Atlas, which I have over here, and this is about having an all vaults section. And I want you to think of a vault as something that you may have used in the past or present where you manage all sorts of information. Basically, it is your PKM system. What does PKM stand for? Personal Knowledge Management. So that's a word that if you're new here, you'll hear very often. We don't want to use too many acronyms, but we can't help it sometimes. PKM, Personal Knowledge Management. So I have a few different vaults, and let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see now. I have you could consider LYT Light my business, but I have my vaults and I have shared vaults. And you can see how simple this is. I have massive amounts of knowledge and information just in these 3 folders. Now, where does Evernote go? So under my vaults, I want to look into my past PKMs, and you'll see right here, I have, among other apps, one for Evernote. And I have all the exported files that we did in a previous video. I have them here now. And the vault that I might open, the old one that I can open in Obsidian, is right here. And not to get too technical with this, but we kind of are. So if you click on that Evernote folder that works in Obsidian, the thing that I'm going to do now on a Mac is hit Command-Shift, period, and we'll see that, oh, I've already opened it in Obsidian, and now there's this kind of hidden file structure that gives it all the plugins that it needs and that sort of thing. I'm going to close that for now, because all we need to do at this point is go to our main vault, click on this thing to open another one. We can go ahead and open that folder as a vault. Then I'd go and track it down. Now I've just done that. So here it is. This is that Evernote. This is my old vault. And it's opening up now. Oh, kind of cool. So it's doing this indexing for the first time now that it's opening on this computer. So it's just kind of neat to know, even in Evernote, I had links forming with some old projects. That's pretty cool. So while that's happening, I did prepare just a few different notes, and I have a couple different walkthroughs. This is the nitty-gritty stuff where it's like, how do we, okay, I know I don't want to be in Evernote, but how do I get over into Obsidian? How do I manage this old information? Number one, treat it like the dusty attic. And I really strongly recommend you don't import everything over into your main vault. In a previous video, I showed that as the default option just to show you what was possible. But what I've done in the past and what I highly recommend is you keep your old Evernote notes completely separate from your main Ideaverse, because you don't want to bring in all this baggage and all this junk into your new space. You're just bringing in your old problems to your new home. Like, don't do that. Let's start fresh in your core Ideaverse and don't bring all this stuff in. Then you're thinking, oh, my mind is split. Well, really, is it really? Like, how often do you have to go to the attic to find some winter clothing or something? It's probably a rarity that you have to, or whatever that junk is under your bed. Like, you don't have to go there too often. And that's how you want to treat this. And I have a few examples that I want to get through. So if I go back over to my main Ideaverse, I'm going to open up a note, my rhetoric map. I happen to love the subject of rhetoric, you know, the kind of the art of persuasion. Now that it kind of has some negative connotations, but it's basically, can we communicate effectively? I think that's a pretty important thing. So there's so much involved with it. It's so joyful to experience for me. And I love the kind of the ancient slant of it all. So I have some different notes in here, but I want to, maybe let's focus on this one. Storytelling transitions, but therefore meanwhile. This was an old Evernote note. So let's actually track it down over here, and I'm hoping, likely most of the time I do this, it has the same title, Storytelling Transitions, and there it is showing up. All right, so what I did was I copy and pasted everything from here over to a new note here. Cool. That's pretty great. Now, what's interesting is you'll notice in Obsidian, however, I'm thinking about this differently. In the original one, there's no uplink, there's no top link, there's no connection. And Obsidian really encourages that way of thinking through relationships, through context. And, you know, frankly, that's how we learn better. That's how we remember and recall more effectively. So it's so natural to make this storytelling transitions note, and then at the top of it, have it link back to rhetoric. So now I have this link that goes both ways. I can always just click on this and come back to the map. So if I'm ever in the weeds, I just go back up to the map. And if I'm in the map and I'm like, well, I know there was that thing about like transitions and stories, and then I just go to the rhetoric map and boom, I'm in it. Okay, there's one more thing to do. Now, if we go back to Finder, this Evernote PKM of mine isn't the one that I typically use because I've already combined all these past PKMs of mine into a single storage vault, which is here. And I don't want to go too deep into that because that one has some private information in it. But all that Evernote stuff exists here. So just for the sake of the example, however, in this currently open vault, what I do always is at the end of it, I hit two letters, DN, and boom, it says transferred. Now I have that programmed on a hotkey on Mac, don't worry about it. The point is this, when you want to transfer something to your new vault, give yourself a reminder in the old one that, hey, I took this out of the attic and now it's synthesized, it's assimilated into my new Ideaverse. And how great does that feel? So now I know if I'm ever looking for this and years have gone by and I'm a little unsure, then I might go back to the Evernote Vault, then I see, oh, I already transferred it. And then I'll just search for some keyword in here and boom, I'll be right there. So that's how you have clarity and certainty when you transfer a single file into your main Ideaverse, that's where it exists. And you have this double check, super low tech, super simple, by simply just going to the old one and adding transferred into the file name. Like, how simple is that? And I was just looking, I wanted to just share some other things. Like, here is an image. How cool is this? Like, this is part of that import process from Evernote. Like, I love having this handy, but again, it's in the storage system. I don't need this day to day. This is when I was having a fitness boxing program, so I don't need this right now. What's this one? This is a super cool graphic. I just like having it handy and some notes on how to improve it in the next iteration. So some really neat things here. It's nice to go down memory lane, kind of like, I guess, for those who are aware of the movie Chevy Chase and Christmas Vacation, he goes up in the attic and he plays the old footage. So that's kind of what this feels like. I'm just playing the old footage, and that's a nice trip down memory lane, but I don't necessarily need to spend all this time with the old stuff trying to transfer 5,000 whatever notes and files, etc. into the new Ideaverse. It's like, no, like when you have a need, you go back over there and you pull it in. Okay, I hope that gives you so much context. I know I went into a lot of details, but I think that's oftentimes what you would like to see. Let me know in the comments below if you like this level of granularity and commentary around this issue, because I do know a lot of you have some trepidation around leaving Evernote. How do I even do that? They put me in these golden handcuffs. They attracted me with the shiny, and then in the darkness, they bound me. Now I feel like trapped. Okay, anyways, that is how you would transfer those old files. Now we get to stay in Obsidian. That's how powerful this tool is, and I'm just excited to go into really fast Evernote's 5 CEOs and their goals in a single word each. Okay, so here we go. Here's the list of the CEOs so far. Number 1, Stepan Pachikov. So from 2004, 2008, empower. Stepan's vision was to empower us all to have what we needed when we needed it at the right time, reliably. Phil Libin came in and expanded Evernote, and that's why we know about it today, thanks to Phil's efforts. There were some unforeseen complications with that effort to fly so high in the sky that their wings burnt. Unfortunately, Chris O'Neill comes in to try to restructure. I think that went decently enough. Ian Small comes in to try to stabilize all the restructuring and make sure it could be monetized, and probably prepare it for what happened recently, which is the acquisition of Evernote by an Italian company, Bending Spoons, which is where Luca Ferrari comes in. What is that goal? What will it be in the end? If I had to guess right now, it's simply to monetize. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's what we have. We're going to fly through this because we've talked a lot about it already. So despite its early success, several factors contributed to Evernote's decline. Number 1 was this urgent need to make money. Where did that need come from? It happens when companies take on venture capitalist money. It's amazing. That's how we get so much great growth out of tech companies, and they can scale their operations. But the dark side is it forces them to think, how can we make more money? How can we get more out of our best users? And the thing was, the majority of Evernote users weren't so keen to upgrade from the free version. Number 2, and the one that we can always complain about, is feature bloat. Evernote just added so many unwanted features. It made the software slower, less joyful to use. And that goes into number 3, a diluted vision. Evernote confused everyone by expanding into socks, along with scanners, backpacks, and more. And so Pachikov's vision of every note ever written at any time in any place, that whole vision started to feel like an afterthought as opposed to the core vision. And that was a problem. Number 4, increased competition. If Google Docs, Microsoft OneNote, and Apple Notes were not enough, all the magic and enthusiasm, the grassroots groundswell of support that Evernote once had has been 100% transferred to Notion and to Obsidian. And once that magic's gone, good luck getting it back. Now, if you're curious, what I just did is I was able to zoom in on a header so I could just have a little bit more of a focused, concentrated view, but we're going to go back up to the rest of the story. Okay, away from the screen, and I don't know if this will actually make the video, but like Evernote, right? We all have a relationship with it. Most of us do. And it's a painful thing to have to leave and feel like there's such a sunk cost and missed opportunity and what went wrong. But you know, so much went right, and we have to be grateful for that. Now, the big reason that I left is because of privacy, of formatting issues, of all these things. But the one that I haven't talked about that is actually kind of painful for me is Evernote lost my information. It lost 2 audios that I tried to record, and they weren't regular audio recordings. They were really important ones of people who aren't around anymore in my life. And when I recorded that, I thought it would save the recording, but it didn't. And so, like, I know I shouldn't. The stuff happens, right? Knowledge it's a fragile thing. Like, we think we save something and it's there forever. It's not. There's so many different ways that we can lose information and knowledge and memories. And a lot of what we're trying to do is hold on to the stuff that matters so dearly to us. In the moment, it seems like everything does, but there's stuff that really does. And those audio recordings that just did not save properly, I mean, I was burnt once. I should have known better, and I tried again. And we expected to be able to have something, and we didn't. And I don't know. So I don't want to hold that against Evernote. That can happen with any software. A lot of unknown variables happen. Probably should have had a backup recorder going at those moments. But you know, so that's, again, I don't know if I want to even put this in, but it's just kind of the musings around Evernote and why we should be thankful for it, but also why we should move on. Okay, now I mentioned having a secret reason for getting you to switch. And no, again, I don't get paid by Obsidian or Notion. My secret reason is I believe that many of us need a hard reset on our toxic relationship with knowledge. I mean, like, what if ideas just weren't a means to an end, but wholly meaningful on their own? Ideas, thinking. Like, what if the journey was emphasized over the destination, not in words, but in actions every day, by honoring the space that you think in, developing there, cultivating ideas, experiencing the sense of intrinsic joy within it? Do you know what happens then? The hard stuff becomes easy. I know, because I have felt this. You turn learning and creativity into an inherently joyful activity again. Suddenly, by trying half as hard, you're producing more than ever, and it's more meaningful than ever too. And that's why I want you to consider the switch, if nothing else, to rough up old habits and to challenge them and stop capturing all the nonsense. Get your mouth off of the fire hose and just sit with your own thoughts. Can you imagine if you replaced all that noise out there with your own thoughts and interactions and insights and relationship building of different ideas? I mean, you'd have such a far healthier and sustainable relationship to knowledge. I have felt this, and that's why I make these videos. That's why I'm spreading this message, because we have such a harmful relationship to knowledge, and it is easy to change it up. I believe that our environment shapes us more than we realize, even when we realize how much our environment shapes us. And I will tell you this from 3 years of experience now, Obsidian is an environment that's going to shape you into a better thinker who has more joy doing that act that we do every day, thinking itself. I'm just curious though, are you trying to be less of a collector and more of a creator? And if so, how is that going? Like, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to stay connected, take this portal with me to this video where I share why you might want to leave Evernote if you haven't seen that yet, and how you can import your notes into Obsidian. So hopefully I will see you there now.